Hey dreamers, this is Jade. Welcome back to my channel. I am here to do some more One Piece anime journaling. Now we are getting into the intense arcs of this anime, and I'm gonna just let you know right now. I'm gonna try my best not to cry as I'm explaining what's going on here because it always gets me in my feels. Always gets me in my feels. Anyway. So, starting off, Luffy is reluctant to free Crocodile, who he ended up beating back in the Alabasta arc. But Yvonne is there and offers to keep him in line by blackmailing him because she knows about some kind of weakness that he has. And Jinbei, of course, decides to come because he sees something in Luffy that he wants to help him, and he wants to keep the war between the Whitebeard pirates and the Marines from getting out of hand. So, also along the way, they run into Mr. One, which is the person that was on Crocodile's side during the Alabasta arc, and he fought Zoro, or Zoro fought him, beat him. Crocodile releases number one, and they all go together. And so they all are journeying up through Impel Down, trying to get out of here. I think they reach level 4, and they're having to beat some guards and stuff like that. Meanwhile, Buggy and Mr. 3 have released the prisoners on level 2 as a way to cover their escape, and Magellan, trying to suppress that, has released Shiryu, who used to be a guard there at the prison. However, he was like torturing the people, he was like torturing the prisoners and everything like that, and so he ended up being imprisoned and impaled. And of course, immediately after promising not to get out of hand, I guess, or whatever, Shiryu basically kills all the guards and goes on about his business. However, Blackbeard has arrived at Impel Down. He is there to recruit people for his pirate crew, and he speaks with this Shiryu guy and ends up recruiting him into his pirate crew. Now, at this juncture, Luffy and his crew has basically run into Hannibal, who is the vice warden of Impel Down, and he goes to defeat him, and then Blackbeard ends up breaking up the fight between Hannibal and Luffy. And Luffy recognizes Blackbeard as the guy way back when they went to Skypiea, who was telling him that it does exist, etc., etc. And he realizes now that he's not a good person, as I said before, because he is the one that just basically causing chaos and stuff like that. And he is the cause of Ace being in Impel Down in the first place, and the one that Ace was after. So Luffy is putting all of this together, and so now he's pissed at Blackbeard, and he takes a go at Blackbeard. And then I do believe Jinbei steps in at this moment, and he's like, okay, we don't have time for this. We need to go rescue Ace, so you're gonna have to put this on the back burner so we can get out of here and get to Marineford to get Ace. But Magellan is hot on their heels right now. So Yvonne and Inazuma, the person who can cut through everything, decides to stay back and take on Magellan, while Luffy and the rest of the crew move forward trying to escape there so they can go and get Ace. Despite their best efforts, Yvonne and Inazuma are defeated by Magellan, and Luffy, of course, becomes enraged by this, learning about Magellan defeating them both, and Mr. Tooth and Jinbei persuade him that escaping is the priority here. But Magellan initiates a plan to move the marine ships away from Impel Down, trapping them effectively there in the prison. Mr. 3 blocks Magellan's poison, which gives Luffy the idea to have him wrap his limbs in the wax fruit so he can fight Magellan, but also stave off the poison so he doesn't get poisoned again. And so that's what happens there, and they are of course going at it, Magellan and Luffy. As they continue their battle, Jinbei, Crocodile, and Mr. One has secured a marine vessel for them to get out of there. Meanwhile, Luffy is still fighting. However, at some point the poison just basically renders the wax coating that he had on his limbs useless. Thankfully, at this time, Yvonne has managed to basically kind of have healed herself, and her and Inazuma come out of the woodworks and take on Magellan, while Luffy and the others escape Impel Down. And with Jinbei being a fishman, he summoned some whale sharks to basically act as a bridge for the rest of the people in Impel Down escaping to get to that marine vessel and the other ones that Magellan tried to send away. And Magellan is basically left staring after everybody like, I know this did not just happen. They did not just escape here for real, for real. So yeah, that's what happened there. The only trouble here now is how are they supposed to get out of the gates of justice, to get into the sea to find Marineford, since it's closed and it can only be opened by the warden or someone, if the warden gives someone orders. So what we find out is it's closed at first and then it starts opening. And they're like, what? Why are they doing this? So we find out that number two, Bon Clay, who can take other people's appearances, has disguised himself as the warden Magellan and opened the doors for them to get out. Basically, sacrificing himself for the cause here and effectively ensuring that he probably will not survive this. And the friendship, like it's just top tier. It's just top tier. Bon Clay, you a real one right there. Okay, love me some Bon Clay. Now that they're on their way to Marineford, some of the people that are on these boats are like, "What? This is not where I want to be going," and they are trying to stage a mutiny, Buggy included. However, he changes his mind when someone reveals that Buggy used to be on Roger's crew, Goldie Roger's crew with Shanks. He basically takes that and wields it to his advantage and has all these people following him and saying Captain Buggy da 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 blah blah blah. So he decides to go through with the rest of the crew to go to Marineford, as if he really had any choice in the matter. But yeah. So now we're catching up with the other Straw Hats. Nami is on an island called Witheria in the sky, and Frankie is on some island. I can't remember the name of it right now. However, it is in the cold. He's being chased by cyborgs, and he finds this abandoned lab labeled Vegapunk. So that's what's going on with Nami and Frankie at the moment. Sanji is on the Kamabaka Island, which is basically Yvonne's main island of where she comes from, the queer island. And he encounters Caroline, who is basically the most formidable warrior on Kamabaka's island, and he has to engage in battle with her to be able to get a ship to leave and go and find his crew. And so then we have Chopper, who is dedicated himself to caring for a giant baby bird that has fallen from its nest and nursing it back to health. And so that's what's going on with Chopper and what he's up to. Robin was captured by guards on some place called Tequila Wolf and eventually freed by the Revolutionary Army. And then we have Usopp, who is running from basically these man-eating plants on a place called, it says Greenstone Island, but I remember it being called the Bowen Islands. So yeah, I'm gonna just call it the Bowen Islands. And he meets this man who has been living on the Bowen Islands forever and kind of knows how to navigate it. And his name is Heracles. And so that's what Usopp and Robin have been up to. Zoro and Perona are trying to head to sea to return to Sabaody. However, they stumble upon a huge tombstone where they're at, and Brook decides that he wants to wait to find Luffy until he can fulfill his debt to the Haratania, I think that's how you pronounce it, people there. And so yeah, that's what's going on with Zoro and Brook. In the meantime, Luffy is recalling his childhood with Ace and meeting him again in Alabasta and getting his Viva card so they can meet up again. And then also his encounter with Teach or Blackbeard and Jaya when they were headed to Sky Island without knowing who he was at the time, and then hearing the news about Ace's execution. And as Ace awaits his execution, he is reminiscing about his encounter with Blackbeard that ended up landing him in Impel Down in the first place. So Luffy is on his way, but at Marineford, as everyone is awaiting Ace's execution, they have told the three admirals to prepare for the Whitebeard pirates' attack on them. And so it introduces the three admirals, and we see flashbacks from each one, except one that hasn't been introduced yet. So we get flashbacks from Akiji, who is the Ice Man and froze like Robin that time. And then we have flashbacks from Kizaru, who we met on Sabaody Archipelago Island. And then we are introduced to the new admiral, Akainu, who has I can't remember the name of his fruit. However, basically he's volcanic, okay? And it's bad. It's bad. So there's only 3 hours until Ace's execution, and Luffy finally reaches Marineford. However, the gates of justice are closed, and Garp is reminiscent about his talk with Goldie Roger as Fleet Admiral Sengoku reveals to the whole world that Ace is indeed the son of Goldie Roger. And this begs the question, how the hell are Luffy and Ace brothers? Since they are broadcasting this news, everyone is shocked. However, back in the day, Gold Roger had a kind of a relationship, kind of like the same kind of relationship that Kobe and Luffy has with Garp. And he asked Garp to protect his son. He knew he was coming, and he knew he was going to be executed. So Garp did that. The woman that he had gotten pregnant, Ace's mother, who is Porcus D. Rouge, who he takes his name after because he didn't want to be affiliated with Gold Roger. So he is Porcus D. Ace. She somehow hung on to his birth because people were looking for Ace or pregnant mothers to get rid of him in the womb, and that was not happening. So she held on to him as long as she could and birthed him, and Garp ended up taking him and giving him to someone to raise him so he would be out of harm's way. At this time, Whitebeard has launched his assault on the Marines to get Ace back, and they are coming from underwater. Him and his crew and his allies, they are coming for Ace. And so the gates of justice are opening, and Whitebeard has the trimmer fruit. So he comes in, and basically it's like cracking air. It's like how you crack a mirror, but he can crack air and cause earthquakes, which pushes Luffy's boat backwards, and they end up Luffy ends up falling from the sky, and he's like, I'm coming for you, Ace. And it ends basically like that. So we're continuing on, and I have to say, in the next few events will be major spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, please mute this or either click off the video completely. I get it, I understand. So Luffy has finally shown up. He and his comrades are barreling from the sky, and they meet. Of course, Whitebeard is finally there. He has shown up, and Crocodile actually ends up going for Whitebeard, and Luffy is like, nah, that's not what we're here for. And Crocodile, knowing that Luffy knows his weakness, gives it up. Whitebeard confronts Luffy, and Luffy is like, listen, old man, I don't care what you got to say. I'm gonna be king of the pirates, etc., etc. And this old man is like, who is this little kid? Okay, he knows he's Ace's brother, and that's about it. And Luffy is like, listen, I'm here to get my brother. So they both agree, because since they have the same purpose, that they will do what they need to do, and they won't get in each other's way. So now that Luffy is there with renewed vigor, the pirates begin fighting back, and Ace is up on this scaffold. So that is the goal, that is the purpose, to get to Ace, and that's where Luffy is going, and he is getting there through hell and high water. He is fighting vice admirals, marines, all kinds of stuff, and of course his people are helping him in any which way that they can, and it's wonderful. And Sengoku, who is one of the admirals there, is noticing Luffy and how that's Luffy's real superpower. His ability to galvanize and inspire people around him to fight for his cause, and it's beautiful every single time. And Sengoku is like, oh, we're losing this, we need to get on it. And he announces that Luffy is actually the son of Dragon, who is the head of the Revolutionary Army. And Whitebeard is impressed, so he tells his second in command, Marco, to protect Luffy at all costs. At the same time, Ace is panicking. He sees Luffy in so much danger, and he doesn't want that for his brother, and he tells Luffy to back off, to go away, that he's lived his life, and they have two separate lives, and he doesn't want him fighting his battles for him. And Luffy is like ignoring this. He was like, whatever. You're my brother, and I'm coming to rescue you. I'm coming for you. So as Luffy advances, he draws the attention of Tashigi, who startles Smoker, and Smoker goes after him. And of course, it's a battle, and Luffy is almost taken out because Smoker has this thing called Sea Prism Stone at the end of his staff, which basically makes your devil fruit null and void. And of course, then Boa Hancock comes in and fights Smoker on Luffy's behalf, because Boa about Luffy is very much my man, and she's like, this is not what we're doing here. And she also has the key to Ace's handcuffs, so she gives that to Luffy, and he is very, very grateful to her for helping him out and also giving him the key to free his brother. Yvonne is surprised that Bartholomew Kuma, which we met back in Thriller Bark and Sabaody, is fighting against her because he is actually a fellow Revolutionary Army soldier, and Doflamingo and a seven warlord of the sea. And Doflamingo reveals that Kuma is no longer Kuma. He has basically been engineered to be a different person. I'm not exactly sure how all of that goes yet because I haven't reached the arc that explains that. However, he's not the person that she knows. Luffy then encounters Mihawk. You guys know Mihawk. He is who Zoro fought in the East Blue and lost to, and is basically now the greatest swordsman in the world, which is Zoro's aim. Anyway, he encounters Mihawk, and Mihawk is not going to let him go. Jinbei jumps into the fight to try to protect Luffy, but they both kind of end up in peril or whatever. And Crocodile releases his sandstorm thing and brings Buggy in front of them, and Luffy ends up using Buggy as a shield to get away from Mihawk. Sengoku proclaims the need to be victorious here, so the Marines line up a fleet of pacifistas and have them take out the allied ships of Whitebeard. So at this time, Sengoku orders that all the video feed that this is being broadcasted out to be cut. However, Buggy's people have captured a video feed, and they are advertising Buggy. Just shenanigans, okay? Shenanigans with Buggy. And Sengoku also wants the walls activated to keep these the pirates in this enclosure so they can continue on with the fighting, and so the Marines can ultimately beat the pirates. Now, as the allied boats are being taken out by the pacifistas, Squared is one of Whitebeard's allies, and he is on the boat with Whitebeard or whatever, and he basically ends up betraying Whitebeard and stabs him through the chest. And everybody's like, what the hell is going on? I'm shocked, okay? I'm shocked, I tell you, shocked. We found out later that he was convinced by Akainu that this was all a setup by Whitebeard, and Whitebeard was setting up his allies to take the brunt of the force of the Marines and basically get them all killed, etc., etc. Whitebeard actually ends up forgiving Squared, calling him his foolish son, and he makes a way out for his allies to leave if they want to, and he says that they can continue on fighting or they can leave, and it's their choice. And realizing that he was tricked, Squared basically falls to his knees and asks for forgiveness, and everybody continues on fighting to get Ace out of captivity here. So now Whitebeard is actually in the fight, and trying to prevent him from reaching the execution platform, they activate the walls that comes up, and Luffy was close. He actually had extended his arms to get to Ace, and once they activated the walls, it made him end up falling back down. And I forgot to tell you guys about Little Oars Jr., who is a descendant of Oars from Thriller Bark. You remember the giant I was telling you about, the huge giant? Well, he has a descendant called Little Oars Jr., and Little Oars Jr. is an ally of the Whitebeard Pirates, and I just love him so much. And he was a friend of Ace, and Ace, like, because he's so, closer to the sun and everything, Ace made him a hat to keep out the rain, to stop the sun from shining. It was just a really sweet flashback of their friendship. And they had already taken him out, so he was just kind of lying there. His body was kind of lying there, preventing that piece of the wall from coming up. And by this time, Akichi has found the feed that Buggy had and frozen it so nobody else can see what is going on. And people are like, what the hell? What's going on? Why can't we see what's happening in the war? Now, previously, Akichi had used his Ice Devil Fruit to lock the ships in. However, they are trying to keep this wall up or whatever, so they need to melt the ice, and this is where Akainu comes in with his volcano thing and melt all the ice, so their ships start sinking and everything like that. It's a mess, and they're trying to keep them out from getting over the wall to get to Ace. However, Jinbei actually ends up launching Luffy over the wall. So Luffy is attempting to slip past the admirals, but they are, of course, ganging up on him, and he has people jumping in to help him, like Marco. And then Ace is about to be executed, and Crocodile decides Whitebeard can wait his revenge on him. I don't even know what the beef is between these two. They can wait. He doesn't want the Marines to win, basically. And so he stops the execution, and then Aokiji attacks Luffy. And then this is when Marco jumps in, and then Mr. Three, remember Mr. Three, who had the wax fruit? He hides in the passageways below Marineford to escape Akiji's freezing, and then the Whitebeard pirates rush towards the opening in the wall since Little Oars has gotten up. And then Whitebeard, he releases basically his trump card here, and he had a boat basically submerged below the water, and that comes up from out under the surface of the water, and Little Oars helps the boat get over the wall. Since he's a big giant or whatever, he basically just takes the boat in hand and shoves it over the wall so they can get closer to where they need to be to rescue Ace. Ace is now remembering his childhood and how people would speak ill of Roger, and he would just wonder if he was ever even meant to be born. But then he looks out to the crowd and sees all the people who care and love for him, fighting to save him, and he decides that he does indeed want to live. By this time, Luffy is down for the count, and he begs Yvonne to inject him with more hormones to get him up and going again. And she's like, "No, I can't do that. You'll die if I do that." And he's like, "I would rather be dead than fail to save my brother." Whew, okay. And so she does whatever she needs to do to restore him to health so he can continue on with the fight. Yvonne warns Luffy that the hormones are basically just a trick to the body, but it's enough for him to keep going, and so he's moving on. Everybody's coming at him, everybody's jumping in, and then he sees Kobe. Y'all remember Kobe from way back in the day when Luffy rescued him from Alvida's ship? He is Marine now, and he comes towards Luffy, and of course Luffy quickly dispatches him because he's not yet to the level of Luffy's power. So they have new executioners up ready to execute Ace. Sengoku gives the go ahead, and Luffy is there, and he screams, "Don't you dare!" And it reverberates through everything and starts laying everybody out, and everybody is just commenting on this. And some of the people know what it is. It's laying people out left and right. Just the power of it, and his conqueror's hockey that has come through. Told you I would get to the hockey. So we're here now at the hockey. He is wielding this, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know that he has this power or how to use it willingly, but he does, and that's how he lays these people out, and it makes a clearer path for him to get to Ace. So Luffy makes his way to the execution platform because the executioners have been laid out by his hockey, and he encounters his grandpa Garp, who tries to prevent him from going to get Ace or whatever. And Luffy is like, "You need to get out of the way," and quickly dispatches his grandpa as well. Okay, he takes him out as well. So he is now at the execution platform with Ace, and he's very happy to finally be up there with his brother. So Luffy takes out the key to unlock Ace, and of course Kizaru uses his light thingy Shimangi and splits the key in half. Meanwhile, Sengoku is up there with them, and he turns into this big gold giant Buddha and is coming to slam down on them. However, one of the executioners, which happens to be Mr. 3, when he hid in the passageway, he came out and he used his wax to basically cover Ace and Luffy and himself to prevent them from being hit by this thing. And he makes a key with his wax fruit to release Ace from his cuffs. So Ace and Luffy are now free, and they're fighting their way back to Squared to get on his ship to escape Marineford. Whitebeard decides to stay behind because he's saying that the new generation and everything, the new age coming forward in piracy is not for him. And everybody is like, "No, you need to come, you need to come." He's like, "No, go ahead, my sons. You need to get out of here," or whatever. So Whitebeard does his thing. He cracks the air so they can flee, and they're going, and then they come across Akainu, the guy with the volcano powers, who is trying to still take out Ace, and he's basically taunting him about Whitebeard and everything like that. And Ace does not like to have his captain insulted, and of course he can't let it go. He goes back to fight Akainu. So Ace is basically outmatched by this guy, and he and Ace are going back and forth, which makes Luffy out in the open and vulnerable, and so Akainu takes advantage and goes for Luffy. However, Ace gets there in time and takes the hit for him, effectively having a hole puncture his whole chest. So he is punched by a magma fist and basically falls into Luffy's arms. Akainu then goes to try to attack Luffy. However, he is thwarted by Jinbei and some others. And Ace is basically there reminiscing about everything, about his life, about his goal to find out whether or not he deserved to be born. And so everyone is there, and Ace is just remembering and loving his friends and remembering his relationship with Luffy. And they tell Luffy, because he is devastated, that he Ace cannot be saved because his organs have been burned through. And at the end there, Ace basically thanks everyone and thanks Luffy for loving him. And Luffy is done. He's distraught. He's devastated. He's basically catatonic after Ace passes away and his fever card disappears. So Whitebeard basically pronounces that the One Piece is real, creating a new pirate era, and this basically is a shadow of, or a repeat of, what happened with Goldie Roger. Trafalgar Law shows up and rescues Jinbei and Luffy from the melee that is going on, and then Kobe is overwhelmed because his observation hockey has come up, and he's hearing voices and stuff everywhere, and he's trying to get the Marines and the pirates to stop fighting each other, because everything has been settled now. Ace has been executed, and then Shanks but Akainu goes to kill Kobe as well because he's trying to get them to stop, and Shanks shows up and stops him and declares that Ace and Whitebeard both will have a burial. And then Blackbeard steals Whitebeard's power. It's a mess. Anyway, that is it. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below.